There are a lot of teams and players that face a lot of pressure and high expectations going into this upcoming season, whether it be those still looking to secure their first championship as their prime years dwindle away, or maybe those that already have titles to their names but are looking to add another to further cement their legacy. Or it could be players who signed or were traded to new teams and have immense pressure to perform in getting their new team over the hump and winning a ring. But whatever it may be, there is one player in particular that, in my opinion, has the most pressure riding on them going into this season, more so than any other player, and that's Joel Embiid, who signed another max extension with the Sixers to the tune of 3 years, $193 million, now making his current deal still left under contract of a total of 5 years, $301 million. A contract that will go through the 28-29 season when Embiid is 35 years old. Embiid, who turned 30 this past season, is obviously still playing at an extremely high level. He's a superstar in this league, consensus top 10 player in the NBA, 2-time scoring champ, 7-time All-Star, MVP winner, but the regular season accolades hasn't always translated to success on the biggest stage of the postseason, having never made it beyond the second round of the playoffs despite having talented rosters around him. And while the pressure has always been there for Joel Embiid to get his team to the next level, Embiid, as he enters his age 30 season, is going to be under the most scrutiny and pressure he's ever had in his career with the new addition of star forward Paul George and the budding star of Tyrese Maxey. Why so much pressure, you ask? Well, let's talk about it further. As always, if you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe to help the channel grow, and in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this. So when the Philadelphia 76ers drafted Joel Embiid with the 3rd pick overall in the 2014 draft, it was viewed by most at that time anyway to be a risky but calculated move, and that Embiid, who was one of the more dominant college basketball players playing for Kansas, a player who could become a franchise-altering piece, but also came with him the uncertainty around his future health and longevity in the league. Embiid would get injured in his lone season with the Jayhawks, and it was unclear whether he would in fact be able to play in his rookie year. But for the Sixers, that was okay, because they had time to let the big man heal while they continued to tank and trust the process of building through the draft by landing franchise level players for the future. Embiid not playing in his rookie season would actually benefit the Sixers to land yet another top pick in the following draft. Unfortunately for them, though, they squandered it away by taking Jahlil Okafor with the 3rd pick in the 2015 draft. But while the Sixers saw season after season sitting at the bottom of the Eastern Conference and missing on players like Okafor, Markelle Fultz, and even Ben Simmons, the real prize from all those years of tanking was Joel Embiid, a selection teams like the Timberwolves and Bucks passed up on because of the risk of his future. And while ultimately Embiid would miss his first 2 seasons in the league and playing in limited games and minutes in his actual rookie year, his 3rd season in the league, it was clear right off the bat that Joel Embiid was the real deal. Going from not playing basketball for 2 years to putting up over 20 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks in just his first year back. His first year playing basketball at the highest professional level. And then, of course, he really just took off from there, where in his first full season without limited minutes restrictions, he would go on to become an all-star, a top defensive player of the year candidate, 2nd team All-NBA, and has never really looked back after that, getting better with each passing season. The challenge for the Sixers, though, is that while they have their franchise player, one of the best players in the world, they still have yet to win a championship under their superstar. They've gone through multiple iterations of their roster around Joel Embiid, pairing him with multiple stars, like making a big trade for Jimmy Butler, all but to have him leave in free agency in that same offseason. Ben Simmons, who was an all-star and one of the better defenders in the league until he lost all confidence and then suffered multiple injuries himself before demanding to be traded. The Sixers then trading Simmons to add James Harden to the roster as their playmaker, facilitator, and adding a major scoring piece with Embiid, a player that could actually shoot and space the floor. But then, of course, things didn't work out with Harden either, as him and Daryl Morey would end up going through a very messy divorce, and yet again, more trade demands where Harden would get moved to the Clippers. Don't forget Tobias Harris either, by the way. I know he struggled the last couple of seasons that he was on the team and wasn't anywhere close to the type of player that he was getting paid to be, but he was a damn good player in those initial years after first joining the Sixers. And then, of course, the Sixers hitting a gem in the draft, selecting Tyrese Maxey late in the 1st round, and he's now turned into an all-star himself. But despite the multiple roster iterations, going from a tanking team to a title contender since Embiid was drafted, none of it has worked. And for the Sixers, they're now getting to a place where their window to win is getting smaller and smaller. And that even is more so the case after adding Paul George this summer. Paul George is now 34 years old, still an elite player, one of the best in the league, but he's getting to that age where he knows his days to win a championship are numbered. And given his injury history, it's not a situation where you can expect George to be healthy and just as good as what we're currently seeing for the entirety of his upcoming 4-year contract that he signed with the Sixers. And while there is also going to be a lot of pressure on Paul George this season to perform and bring Philly a championship, especially at his age, his contract, and the fact that he's never won before, it's not going to be on the same level of pressure as Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid is a bigger star, more dominant player, and while everyone has praised Embiid over the years for how great he is, some saying he should be in the same conversation with Nikola Jokic, the more seasons he continues to come up short, the older he gets, and now we're seeing some of these injuries creep back up again. Remember, he missed a lot of games last season. This is Embiid's time to prove all of his doubters wrong, that he's not just some great player in the regular season, that he does have that it factor in him and has what it takes to get his team to the next level, that he does have that killer instinct to take over in the postseason and will his team to a championship. Because as of right now, we have not seen that from Joel Embiid. We've seen a dominant basketball player, one of the best of this generation, falter and get flustered under the brightest lights. Not saying he still hasn't played well in the playoffs, relatively speaking, but it's not at the level we typically see from Embiid. And if you want to separate yourself from being just any perennial all-star to an all-time great, you have to show up at your very best when it matters most. That just has not been the case with Embiid at all. And initially, in his earlier years, it was, well, he's still young, not experienced enough. He's got to go through the pains and battles of the playoffs to see what it takes. He's not young anymore. Those years are over. Time now to put your money where your mouth is, especially when we know that Embiid likes to talk a big game and a lot of trash on the court. Doesn't mean much when you can't make it beyond the second round in a weak Eastern Conference. And look, not all this is Embiid's fault. The Sixers haven't done themselves any favors with the bridges they've burned with James Harden, giving up way too much and trading to get him to come to the team, but to have him leave in less than 2 seasons, overpaying Tobias Harris, not prioritizing Jimmy Butler over him, taking Fultz #1 overall. I mean, there are things that weren't within Embiid's control that sit squarely on the front office. But when you're the team's best player, you're the leader of your team, you're a top 10 player in the NBA, it comes back to you in being able to produce consistent winning and success. And look, it's not like this is the Sixers' only chance in this upcoming season to win a title. They've got Paul George and Embiid under contract for a long time now. But with each passing season, they're getting older, and the Eastern Conference teams around the league are becoming more and more competitive that are going to make it even more challenging for an old veteran team to succeed. This is one of the few seasons for Embiid to take his game to the next level in the playoffs, being a smarter, calmer, more level-headed player in the postseason where he's not turning the ball over incessantly, where he's taking smarter shots, getting his teammates involved, hustling and fighting for second chance opportunities and loose balls, not just flopping a bunch and trying to foul bait. Like, I don't know if it's just because it's the end of the season, the man is just straight exhausted by the end of it, but to me, Embiid looks much more lethargic and lazier on the court with his effort and energy in the playoffs than he does in the regular season. And that's a problem for being one of the best players in the world. And it's what separates him from those who come and play their best basketball on the biggest stage when it matters the most. This is Joel Embiid's year to change that narrative, to change that perception and reputation about himself, about being a superstar that goes MIA in the playoffs. The league, the fans, the media, and the Sixers are going to expect that of him, and that's why he'll be under the most pressure this season to perform. I would love to hear what you guys think, though. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.